I'll just welcome everyone once again to the Farbrengen here by the Ohel and the Daldamis of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. And I'm not going to repeat everything I said, but I just want to say that the Tzel Namaise, to say a story that I read today on the way from the airport. And this is an akdama to the next speaker, the first speaker of tonight, who's going to speak about in connection with what the Rebbe said in the Farbrengen of Tavshim Emtes. The Rebbe said that, and I quote, "V'neisef al kol zeh, as by yederin, zol zayin de v'achai yitin al libe by everyone. There should be the hachai yitin al libe, that living should take to heart, v'vayz nazara b'chayim, and to show that her children are b'chayim alive, v'demult is he b'chayim, then she is alive, a semen that she is alive. Durch sich ablernen von ihr hanhage und sich öffnen berucha chulu. By learning from her hanhage and conducting ourselves in her spirit, the way she was metech mesiras nefesh. So the next speaker, I'm going to call upon Rabbi Yossi from Atlanta, Georgia, and I want to let me take this opportunity to wish him a hearty mazel tov. His daughter just got engaged 10 minutes ago, I'm told. She came out of the Ohel with the Chassan. Mazel tov, Yossi. So you're probably in a good mood. But before he says he's going to talk about stories of the Rebbetzin, his family, as you all know, we all know, were mekurev to the Rebbetzin, his father, his mother, his grandparents, and he had the opportunity and the schus to be many times by the Rebbetzin in the house and saw her and spoke to her and observed her. So Meili has a lot to say, and he's going to share some of those anecdotes and some of those stories. But as before that, I just want to relate a story that I just read today in the Kfar Chabad that was from this week. It was, they tell the story of Mrs. Sternberg, who had that story with Ahera. She was around the Siyum Sefer Torah of the Yaldi Yisroel, the first one on Chof Tavshim Mem Aleph. So Reb Zalman, her father, Reb Zalman Gerari went, the Rebbe sent him as his shliach to represent him by this Siyum, and he bought the keser. It was a big thing, and but he was reluctant to go because his daughter was having a baby mamish those days, and they knew exactly the day because she had the way it was a cesarean, and she was going to have the baby, and she was nervous, and he didn't want to leave her. The Rebbe told him to go anyway, and he went, and the Rebbetzin got involved, called her every day, and then 3 days after the Leda, which was Yud Zayin Of, which was Chof, so 3 days later was Chof Of, so the Rebbetzin called her and asked her if she has the ability to listen to the Rebbe's Farbrengen in the hospital, if she has the ability to hook up to the Farbrengen. So she said she had a number. She used to listen to Farbrengens in her house oftentimes if she couldn't come to the Farbrengen. So she said she does. So the Rebbetzin told her that Ebazei, if that's the case, she should take the newborn and put the baby on the bed and put the phone piece between her and the little baby, and it should be by the ears of the newborn child. And she said, this is I don't remember the exact lashon, but something to the effect that's a gleiche Zarchi, a choshev Zarchi, an important thing that the child should hear Chassidus, soll hören Chassidus. And so that's it's an interesting sipur. This kid was 3 days old, but that was what the Rebbetzin told her, and we can sich von dem uplearn. We can learn from this something very important. Now, they put a nispach betzidei. They put as a side note that today this young light that have takaneik tev, that as soon as a baby is born, the first thing the baby sees with the eyes of the child and the ears they show the baby a mamish minutes after he's born, when the nurse brings the baby back to the parents, Weissman video, that's the first thing they do. So it's very much connected to what something the Rebbetzin herself said, which I never heard. This was for me a davar chodesh. So having shared with you the story, I call upon Rabbi Yossi to be mamshich in continue sharing his personal experiences with the Rebbetzin. Zog l'chaim.
Shalom aleichem. Chaim, l'chaim. Rabbi Spalter mentioned about the first Yarhtzeit, Chof Beis Shevat Farbrengen was a Shabbos Yisroel. And the Rebbe spoke about the first Sikha, about the Rambam of that day, which was Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Shabbos. And it says over there, Hamavir, the fire, the Isser of fire on Shabbos is Kol Shehu. Is a kol shehu ubelvad shehei tzarich le'efer. The condition is that the ash that was produced by this kol shehu fire is needed, is necessary. That's the isser of fire. And the Rebbe spoke about the Rambam and the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and v'chulu, benigla. And then towards the end of the sikha was a long sikha. The Rebbe said like this: the limud Benegel Apel is that everything that happens, if it doesn't affect the world, even if it's a kol shehu, if it affects the world by tzarich la'efer, then that's a malacha. If not, it's not real. It's nicht a malacha. And then the Rebbe said these words: "So hat gebrennt a fire." The Rebbe spoke about the histalkus, that a fire came. Und hat genommen an a shama. And the Rebbe said that the purpose of this has to be an increase of value in this world. That was the nekuda of the sikha. 3 years later, this sikha came out as a likut, the weekly likut of sikhas. And unbelievably, that likut was Vayakhel Nun Beis. That was, we look at Va'ata Tetzaveh as the last Maimer, Le'esata. This is the last likut, Le'esata. And it comes from that sikha about a fire. It's about, in Parshas Vayakhel it says, Le'savaru Eish. And that's based on that. And there are 27 ha'aras in that sikha. 2 days after that Shabbos was Chav Zayin Oda. And the last ha'ara number 27, is a shakal v'tari about something that was said before, and the last words underlined in that last ha'ara, number 27, is L'ha'ir es ha'olam. L'ha'ir es ha'olam, ufleicht in dem Welt, to light up the world. Because the whole purpose of this whole fire was gebrennt, in the words of the Rebbe, in Memtes, was to affect the world, to make a difference in this world. And because you mentioned this, it came to mind, this Nekuda. For whatever reason, the last likud is not made such a big deal as the last Maimer. But the last likud is such a murderdik likud. It's just a phenomenal sikha. First benigla, and then in Chassidus, it's murderdik. And I say this as a hakdama to the stories that I'm going to say, that the stories that I will tell are stories that need to have a pa'ula. They need to have some kind of an effect of fire, muss brennen, but the fire that burns has to leave behind has to leave behind something that we need. So here's the first story that I'd like to share. and the Uba Hagdama. The Hagdama is that we saw by the Rebbe something which was Parshit. It's hard to describe this. It's lo yu'uman. The Rebbe, in the middle of a Nigunim, could have been clapping or inspiring or waving the hands to bring the Nigunim to more simcha. And then, almost rega kememra, the Rebbe would indicate to Rebbe to start the Maimon Nigunim. And as soon as that began, the Rebbe changed Parshit min hakotze el hakotze begashmias. The Rebbe's face began to change. The Rebbe's demeanor. The Rebbe began to sit in a different way. He was sort of fidgeting, and the Rebbe was fixing his tie, sometimes the beard, and the Rebbe was sort of looking for a place to stay in one place. Like the Maimon was coming. And the Rebbe looked different. And it could have been a few seconds before the Rebbe was smiling and the Rebbe was clapping and waving the hands. And then in a second, it was like a different person. And this was something that was always, we're seeing it all the time. Another example, the Rebbe would be saying a sikha and concentrating on the words, and all of a sudden the Rebbe would smile about something. In the Hanachas, he used to say, he smiled and he said the following. Interesting, you can say a lighter moment, and the Rebbe's face would change. The whole face would light up. And the time that you saw that the most was on Simchas Torah. Bechlal, the Rebbe's whole Metzias on Simchas Torah was different. But when the Rebbe received the Sefer Torah, and the Rebbe came down the bim and went into the Shvil, to take the Sefer Torah into the Ches, into the middle of the shul, it was unbelievable. It was like Melech Basoda, the Rebbe's face had changed. And this was like, from 1 second to another second, it was like a different person. That's what we saw by the Rebbe Begoloi. Now, the Rebbe every day would come home in the afternoon, after Mincha, within an hour of Mincha, with Derech Klal, and would go home. We later found out, Dr. Weiss said, that at that time the Rebbe was drinking tea with the Rebbetzin, and the Rebbe said that half hour that he spends with the Rebbetzin is as important to him as wearing tefillin every day. And no one has to explain to the Rebbe how important tefillin is, and the Rebbe spent that half hour with the Rebbetzin. Now, before the Rebbe left, within 15 or 20 minutes, the Rebbe would indicate to the maskidas to call home and to let home know that the Rebbe is going to be home in whatever it is, 15, 20, whatever minutes that it was. This was Parshat every day. The Rebbe was moidia ahead of time that he's coming home. The Rebbetzin would be prepared for the Rebbe. The Rebbetzin would do whatever she did, and then she sat in her place. The tea was on the table. The Rebbe came in, and the Rebbe would sit down with the Rebbetzin. No one of the Urchim, none of the guests who came to see the Rebbetzin was in the house during the time that the Rebbe came. Because that was, the Mushamashim Musnama were there, but that was the time that the Rebbe spent with the Rebbetzin, and there was nobody, it was no one else. It was the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. I remember when I was a child, and the Rebbe in the Rebbetzин's house, the dining room where the Rebbe davened, there was a dining room table that went from one end to the other end, where the Aron Kodesh is, from that end to the other end. And the dining room table had chairs with very like big backs to them. And the Rebbetzin was a short person, and the back would sometimes like engulf her, swallow her. And yet, when I got a little older, I was like 10, 11 years old, and it became very interesting, the house. Not just the Rebbetzin, but I began to realize that, whatever's happening in this house is Kodesh V'Torah. And so every once in a while, I would steal a little look to see that there's a china closet. There was different things that were around. There must have been chafetzim there from the Rabbeim. And it began to be interesting to me. Every time I looked around, even for a second, I turned back and the Rebbetzin eyes were right in me. The Rebbetzin ran the table. The Rebbetzin ran the table in a very gracious way, smiling, laughing, everything else. And then I was at the edge of the table. The Rebbetzin was sitting on this side, and I was sitting over here. And this was one of the times that we were there. I don't remember which year, but I was young. And one of the chevra who was in the house came over to the Rebbetzin in the middle of this deal. I was there with my grandparents. I don't remember who else, members of my family. And one of the Vechom came down and said something to the Rebbetzin, like into her ear, whispered something into her ear. It must have been that the phone call had come from 770, from the Rebbe, from the mosquitoes, that the Rebbe is on his way. Because in 1 second, the Rebbetzins face completely changed. It was like, Farbrengen was this, and all of a sudden she became this very serious. She didn't say one word. She didn't have to say one word. All she did was have this look on her face, and my grandfather said, like, as soon as he saw that, he said, "Oh, well, I think we've been here long enough. It might be time to go." And the Rebbetzin said, "Thank you so much for coming," and graciously made sure everybody left within a minute or two out. But she never said it. She didn't have to say it. And that leads into a different story. A moederdike maisa. My grandfather was always wanting to have a picture of the Rebbetzin. All the pictures we have are from 1950s, from our wedding. And it's some stark gebenkt. He felt that his house needed, next to a picture of the Rebbe, needed also a picture of the Rebbetzin. My grandfather would speak to the Rebbetzin every week, call up from England, and he had a shaykhus to Beis Harav there. And one time, my grandfather decided, he picked up his guts and he said, "You know what? I'm going to ask the Rebbetzin for a picture." And so when he was by the Rebbetzin, he asked the Rebbetzin if it's possible for him, the next time he comes, they came twice. Every time they came for Yom Tovim, they came twice to visit the Rebbetzin. If the next time he comes, can he bring his camera? Because he would like to take a picture of the Rebbetzin. So the Rebbetzin said, "Why do you need a picture? I'm here. You have the original here." So he says, "Yes, we're very grateful that we have you here, but I might not come back for another year. And I would like to have the Rebbetzins picture. We have a lot of pictures of the Rebbe around the house. We would like to have the Rebbetzins picture in the house as well." And the Rebbetzin was uncomfortable. And the Rebbetzin was saying, "But you come here more often than once a year." The Rebbetzin was finding ways to say. And finally, my grandfather pushed a little too much. And the Rebbetzin said, "Okay, listen, if you need it, then it's okay. Well, bring your camera. We'll take a picture." The next time my grandparents went, they went alone. And I was waiting for my grandfather to come back. It's going to be a picture of the Rebbetzin. There was no pictures around. All the pictures that you see all came out after Chof Beis Shevat. Nobody saw a picture of the Rebbetzin. Nobody knew what the Rebbetzin looked like. And so my grandfather came back. I said, "No, you had your camera in your pocket. Did you take a picture?" He said, "No." I said, "Why not?" He said, "This is the one person in the world that had to have permission to get." He said, "I was waiting for some kind of siman, some kind of sign. And I reminded myself how uncomfortable. I've never met a person in my life who was not just, you don't find, even the pictures that we have are not really poses, only from the wedding. You don't find a person who is like completely uncomfortable with a picture." And she didn't have to say anything. I just felt that this was not quite the right thing to do, and therefore I didn't take the picture. It's such a moederdike thing when somebody doesn't have to say something, and when someone just, in the way you look at them, that's the way they are. And that is only by Pashat Tzadikim, Tzaddikus, Tzidkonius, people who their entire lives are connected to Kedusha V'Tara. And this leads me to another story that happened with me. For my bar mitzvah was in Tavshin Lamed Zayin. And it's right after Shavuot, it's a week after Shavuot, so right after the Yom Tov, we went to the house, to the Rebbe's house, to Rebbetzin. And it was a usual hour and a half, 2 hours of everybody doing different things. The children did this and that. And then my grandfather said, Yossi, it's his bar mitzvah next week. So the Rebbetzin said, bar mitzvah? And what are you doing for your bar mitzvah? I said, I learned the mimer. She said, yeah, besides the mimer, is there anything else? I said, yeah, I'm also learning a pilpul. She says, oh, pilpul. What's the pilpul about? Now, I want you to know that my pilpul was given to me by my teacher, which he said at his bar mitzvah. And so this pilpul came from somewhere in Russia or in Poland. And my teacher of the pilpul was Salazan Gesund Rabbi Beryl Chaikin. And there was not a soul in this world who asked me anything about my pilpul, not even my father and my mother. What pilpul? In Lubavitch, you try to say a pilpul and you say it for a minute or two and then they hock you up anyway. A mimer, of course, we let it go. A pilpul. The Rebbetzin was the first person to ask me the pilpul. Now, the truth is, I'm not quite sure what the pilpul was then anyway. I just learned the words. But I did know the beginning of it. And the beginning of it is a Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Tzadik Amud Beis, which talks about a shoyer tam and a shoyer muad. And it's about dini mominus and dini nefoshes. Today we know it from the Rambam. I'm not going to be choshen anybody from learning Baba Kama. But in the Rambam, in Sefer Nezikin, this whole halacha, almost word for word, is in there. And it talks about a shoyer haniskel. You have to explain what a muad is and a tam, and a shoyer haniskel, and that when it comes to if the shoyer haniskel caused damage, nezek, and then also killed someone, the Gemara says, first you take care of the mominus, and then the nefashos. Because if you do the nefashos, you can't do the mominus anymore. Because, come with the Rabbis. Anyway, it's nigla stuff. And so she asked me, what's this about? So I had to start explaining this. And the Rebbetzin started asking me questions. Like, so, was meinte? What do you mean by this? I was saying it in Yiddish because that's how I was learning it. So she was responding to me in Yiddish, and she understood. She knew exactly what a shoyer niskel was. She knew what a muad and a tam was. And she said, that's in the Chumash. That's in Parshas Mishpatim. It's a heintige Parsha. Parshas Mishpatim. And I was, first of all, I felt quite good that somebody at least took some interest in this very uninteresting part of my life. And she dafka asked not about the mimer, but she dafka asked about the pilpul, and she dafka asked all kinds of questions. She wasn't just smart, and she wasn't just familiar with halachas and Torah, but she was so sensitive, realizing that that's one part of your bar mitzvah that nobody really wants to know, or cares about, or is going to ask too many questions. That was a personal story. And one more story, a personal story, I'll share with you like this. It was Yid Aleph Nissen Tavshin Mem Beis, and the whole world, a ganze Welt, was coming to the Rebbe. And on Rosh Chodesh Nissen, there was a rally for kids, and at the end of the rally, the Rebbe said, "Un Itzter," and now we're going to say some words to the Erwachsene, to the adults here. And basically, the Rebbe said, if you're coming here for Yid Beis Tammuz and for Yittes Kislev, you're coming to cover the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe the Shver. But when you're coming here for Yid Aleph Nissen, it's a Yom Haledes from Pliny ben Pliny, the Rebbe said. It's a Yom Haledes from so-and-so. His Yom Haledes. And he said that the Rebbe said, as far as he's concerned, the people should spend half of the money that they were going to spend on the ticket. They should spend half the money for the Hitzoris on Pesach, and the other half to give tzedakah if you have money lying around. And he's asking everybody not to come. Steht in Yom Yom that Yom Haledes is a day for his beidinus, and he needs time for himself. There's too many people going to be here. The Rebbe's not going to have time. Whatever it was, it put an end to that campaign. I was a bocher. I was learning in Israel at that time, and I came stopover in England on my way to New York for Yud Aleph Nissen. I even had a boarding, I had a seat, and the campaign was very strong to go to the Rebbe, and then the campaign was very strong that nobody should go unless you're going for Pesach. The Rebbe said no is no. Derech Agav, no, not Derech Agav. I'll soon share with you that. So Ma'aseh B'Poel, I was convinced that if you want to follow the Rebbe's Hayrah, the Rebbe's this, you should not go. You mustn't show up in Aleph Nissen. Rabbis do anyway. I have one regret in life, and that is that only regret I have in my life. And that is that I didn't go for that Yud Aleph Nissen. Ma'aseh B'Poel, I didn't go. In the meantime, my grandfather, who was going, also decided he's not going. And then people started telling him, maybe the Rebbe didn't quite mean you. And he got a lot of pressure to go. And he didn't know what to do. And so he decided he's going to ask the Rebbetzin. So he called up the Rebbetzin. And the Rebbetzin said, that's a good question. I'll ask the Rebbe. Call me back at this time. He calls back the Rebbetzin. And the Rebbetzin said, I presented this dilemma to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe did not respond. So my grandfather wasn't a shaitan. So he said to the Rebbetzin, and what's your opinion? So the Rebbetzin said, my opinion is that the Rebbe did not include friends like you. But if something goes wrong, don't blame me. That's what the Rebbetzin said. And so my grandfather came on Friday. Yud Aleph Nissen was on Sunday. My grandfather came on Friday. He came to Mincha. The Rebbe came out to Mincha, and the Rebbe gave the big shmeichel. Oh, he's Baruch Haba. He got his Shalom Aleichem. And then on Sunday, in the afternoon, before the Farbrengen, my grandfather went to the Rebbetzin. And my grandfather was telling the story of the people who were going and the people who were not going, and there was this tumult, and then the Rebbe stopped it, and then I'm here because it's... And then he said to the Rebbetzin how upset I was. Yossi is very upset. I was 17 years old at the time, and she was busy. He was telling the Rebbetzin how disappointed I was. So the Rebbetzin said to my grandfather, tell Yossi that he's not his grandfather. Now, Pashup Pshat means, when I heard this, Pashup Pshat is, listen, he is whatever, and you're But I took it much deeper than that. And I took it in a way that she was really passing along a message to me. And that is, you got a long way to go. Do you think you're going to show up over here? We have to see your face. Remember that if you want to be something, you're not your grandfather. You've got to work. You've got to do something with yourself. That's how I took it. You've got to work on yourself. You darf sitzen und lernen, und man darf davenen, und man darf tun, and you got to work on yourself. You got to make yourself worth something. You've got to make a difference in the world. If you want to be, you have charota that you haven't come. What were you coming for? Because you want to say you were there. When you come to the Rebbe, and when you come to the Rebbetzin, you need to go away realizing that something has to happen in this world that changes in yourself, and not avoda im atzmai and avoda in mityenem. And that's how I took all of these things. The Rebbetzin looked at me with such sensitivity, looking for that pilpul. The Rebbetzin looked around without saying a word and passed along messages, being careful and sensitive to the other person, at the same time saying to the other person. The Rebbetzin stood out in Kedusha and in Chochmah. But most incredibly, so many stories about the Rebbetzin is about just the sensitivity. And that's, of course, a perfect partner to the Rebbe, who was well known for the way the Rebbe spoke and the way the Rebbe dealt with people in that sensitive way. And perhaps on Chof Beis Shevat, it's Shnas Halev, V'achayitin el Liboy. It's about the heart this year. Maybe it's time for us to make a difference the way we approach others, the way we treat others, the way we speak to others, the way we behave around others in sensitivity and in care, then that will definitely make that the fire will be sheyetzorech la'efer, that there will be a need in this world because everybody will be together, beki'ish echad, belev echad, and that will definitely, the achdus from Chassidim, but bringing Mashiach, take it from Yad Mamash.
Oh no. Thank you very much, Rabbi Lou, for those very inspirational stories and Werter and Warmkeit. L'chaim, l'chaim. It's known that Chof Farbrengen is not just a time for speeches and talks. Man singt an Nigen Nechet, you sing an Nigen. And it's also, of course, famous that the Rebbetzin herself has a shaykhis ta Nigen miyuchad nyet nikava, the story in Tafresh Pezayin. Everyone probably knows. So, I'll ask everyone to join in an Nigen nyet nyet. Nyet nyet nikava kramiva. Da 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 ya 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 da 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 ya ya wa ya 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 nyet nyet nikava kramiva nava ya 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 nyet nyet nikava kramiva nava ya 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 wa ya ya da 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 ya 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 wa ya da da ya 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 da da ya 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 nyet nyet nikava ya 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 nyet nyet nikava kramiva nava hey ya ya wa ya 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 wa ya 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 wa ya ya ya. At this time, we're going to show another piece, another clip of the Maris Kodesh from the Nichum Avelim of Tavshim Memches after the Stalkus, two little pieces, two Ktoyim. I'd like to ask everyone to turn their attention to the screen.
noch viele die Gas der Saplis zu dem a binja na dia ja na viele nicht rein na was begonnen wir geben nicht so aber dann ist es sehr viele bin ich so ein Kruin so ein Mann was mir sagt fast mir geht abziehen liegt nicht zwar auf die Unionen so dicke die Spalter die starke Behulan jaten mit Chassidim wir sollen Behulan in so der Quatschstol der alte Rebbe in dem Leben mal sehen jaten mit Chassidim nicht nur Chassidim wie früher nur noch mehr
Ja, Sekunde.
ja das sagt
Het had me bezoekt als een Rebbe verloren, de Rebbetzin, de Remes, de eerste Rebbetzin, had ik gezegd, moedig woord. Als steht niet de manchen die Yisroel hier, van hier is lopen verloren de Rebbetzin. Als je maar dus als zeggen Yisroel, maar hier wordt het toch niet gekend vertrouwen.
Da muss man natürlich gehört haben, hat das gesagt, was ist Abinja Nadiyat.
Ja.
Abinja Nadiyat ist das Falsche, das ist Inja Nitzchi. Das hat die Gmorre gesagt, in Sanhedrin, da ist in der Juri, vergessen das kein Mal nicht. Aber Pekin bringt die Gmorre auf die Dugme an Mesa Allah Rochel. Was Janke was gesagt, Mesa Allah, also ein Nische mit Zeres, aber mit Bala. Biachdim sei von der Dugma Leu versteht in der Linie. Am Mesa Allah Rochel, Liederstadt Mesa Kipschütte. Sie waren nach Kiewer Rochel und Davkin Chuslores und klar, war nicht Abdul Berufe beschoben worden in Legion. Meile waren sie gehen durch zu dem Ort und das wird angerufen, Mische, da war es sie da, sehen was meine Boss, das falschen das, will sie falschen das dich nachher.
Bless you for your kindness, for the help of the responsive population of this city, including the Jewish population, no discrimination. And to go from strength to strength in all things, private and communal.
I'm very, very sorry for your tragedy. Please accept my condolences, my sincere condolences. We're all praying for you in your time of need.
Not blessing to transfer it to good deeds for all the population, as I mentioned before. It will be also the most gratifying thing for the neshama, for the soul of the departed person. Her first name was Chaya. That means life. That is the name that has been inscribed on her matzele. That means that it is perpetual even after the life in this earth. Till transformation. I hope it will be very soon.
I hear she was a wonderful, wonderful woman, your wife. Thank you, sir.
In my opinion, it is underestimating.
That's underestimating.
But many God Almighty knows all the truth, and especially everyone who tries his best to emulate, to fulfill her wishes, and to be, as I said before, the best gratification for the Shlomo, and also great use for the living person after her.
In the aftermath of Chof Beis Shevat Memches, the Rebbe began to talk about the Rebbetzin in a way. First of all, we never heard the Rebbe speak about the Rebbetzin before Bechlal, but the Rebbe spoke about her in a eifin that was megadol her and put her on a level versus who are we to understand any of this anyway, but he spoke in Yonim that Mamish Zevis will given a Rebbe in Yonim. And the way the Rebbe was misyaches to the stalkos and to how to remember her, used l'shenis that you use for tzaddikim like Yankovin and the Friedrich Rebbe, he used on the Rebbetzin. Mazar b'chaim, Afhi b'chaim, things of that nature that were extraordinary. And the emphasis, the Rebbe in this little clip, the Rebbe says, whoever really knows the godless of the Rebbetzin, only the Eibishter really knows her godless. So before I call up the next speaker, who will speak on this topic of, as it was titled in the flyer, Mazaru B'chaim. If Zaru B'chaim, then Hi B'chaim. I just want to mention that the emissaries, the Rebbetzin, in Tafshin Yud, we're told that the Rebbetzin was the one that told the Rebbe that, Tafshin Yud Aleph maybe it was, before Yud Shvat, that he has no breira, he must be makabeled in the seas, balanisht. If not, the work of her father, the Friedrich Rebbe, will end, Chas v'sholem. And it was at that time that the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin since Tafresh Peites lived a completely hatzne lechesdika life to the extreme. As we all know, the Sipurim, the how it was by them, even when they came to America, it was still like that. And Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbetzin gave the Rebbe to the world, and she stayed back. And was at Kedei Mesiras Nefesh Mamish. The Rebbetzin was lived alone in the house, and we all know the hakrove, the personal sacrifice that she gave to have the Rebbe, that we should have the Rebbe, whether it was Yechidus, the whole life. What the Rebbetzin did for the Rebbe in Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe did for the Rebbetzin in Tafshin Mem Ches. He gave the Rebbetzin to the world in Tafshin Mem Ches. Till then, she was not masking Weistuis that she should be out there and amongst us and known and so on. But after Tafshin Mem Ches, after this talk, the Rebbe gave her to the world. It was Megalet, Efes Kotzeu, something of the Rebbetzin, Baruch Hashem. And what we have is, we from the Rebbe, we know that we're talking about in Yonim Nifloim. So I'd like to call upon my Chaver Kasriel Shemtov to share with us Divrei Seirus about this topic of Zaru B'chaim, which is a sign that Hi B'chaim, and to elaborate a little on this Nekuda, Yad Hashem Ateva Olav.
L'chaim. Tayere Bride. As we stand here on such an awesome day of the Yom Yarhtzeit Hilula of Chof Beis Shevat, and we have the schus to gather together, Bekiruv Makim, in close proximity to the Tzion of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, and with all of us, and with all those who are listening online, we're really gathering together as one family, from Brider and Schwester. V'yem mishpacha. When we look back at that time, as Rabbi Yisroel mentioned, that period of Chof Beis Shevat and Tavshin Mem Ches, we all experienced in those few years, we saw this incredible contrast. On one hand, we know that the Rebbe, once the Rebbe was makabel the Nesius, the Rebbe accepted the Nesius. It was probably never before in history by any of the Rabbeim, the amount of time, the hours, the days, the thousands of hours that the Rebbe spent with Chassidim, through Farbrengens, through Yechidus, through giving brachas and dollars and meeting people. Everyone wanted to see the Rebbe. And there were Bachrim watching for 24 hours a day, every move of the Rebbe, and documenting it in Beis Chayenu, and in the newspapers and diaries. In other words, the Rebbe was nisgala in a way that it was accessible in many ways, like never before, by any of the other Rabbeim. And then you had the complete contrast, the complete opposite, that the Rebbetzin was behalten, concealed, with a veil. When we were bachrim by the Rebbe, and we looked at this house on President Street, we looked at it with an awe, with a reverence, with a love, but from a distance. It was hidden. No one was able to see. No one was able to come in close contact. I say no one, almost no one. And the Rebbetzin herself, although she was hidden, was completely ibegegeben, devoted her life to the Rebbe, to Chassidim, in a way of Mesiras Nefesh, of complete sacrifice. And then came Chof Beis Shevat. And the Rebbe literally and figuratively opened the doors. And all of a sudden, that same home was the place where thousands of Chassidim will come to daven here, to learn here. The Farbrengen should take place here, in that home. And all those years, all those decades, the Rebbetzin didn't speak about herself. And the Rebbe never shared with us about the Rebbetzin. And Tzendlik Yoren. And then it came after Chof Beis Shevat, and all of a sudden, the Rebbe begins to talk to us, to share with us incredible language, incredible descriptions. What we just saw before on the video, that the Rebbe refers to her with the words of Tzadika de Spalter, Ishtakach b'chula omin yatim b'chayohi, of a tzaddik that is found in this world after their passing, even more than before. As the Rebbe spoke about the Imohis of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, and how that was reflected in the Aveda of the Rebbetzin. The Rebbe said in that Sicha of Tavshin Mem Tes that the Rebbetzins work was Kimitzvah Sitzaynecha Be'ilui Acher Ilui, that the Rebbetzins Aveda and service of Hashem was on the highest and complete level, and as the Rebbe emphasized, that it was done mitoich mesiris nefesh. It was done with sacrifice. And then, in that same Sicha, the Rebbe asked each and every one of us, Lisnahig berucha, to conduct ourselves in her spirit, in her way. And the Rebbe used the lashon then, that when we do that, the Rebbe said, Oz poyalim shehi mevakeshes umispalelas ba'olam ha'emes al kol hamitztarech. That causes that the Rebbetzin should daven and plead in the world of truth for everything of our needs, begashmis and beruchnias, materially and spiritually. Variches yomim v'shanim teves b'tech brias anachena b'boneh chaya u'mezayne revicha u'bekulam revicha. Long life, good years, in good health, with children, sustenance, and in all of those in abundance. And then when we just saw in the video how the Rebbe asked about the Rebbetzin, or commented on the Rebbetzins greatness, and the Rebbe points out that no one understands her greatness. It's underestimated, alluding to that only Hashem can understand the Rebbe's greatness. And when it came to that first Yarhtzeit, on Chof Beis Shevat, and this is in a Sikha that's Muga, the Rebbe says that each and every one of us should increase in Torah, Aveda, Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah. And being that the numeric value, the gematria of her name is 470, which is Ace, the Rebbe said it should be Itim La Torah, to set aside time for Torah. As mentioned earlier, the Rebbe wanted Tzedakah to be done with the number 470 on this day, these 24 hours of Chof Beis Shevat. The Rebbe personally asked that institutions should be founded in her name. And the Rebbe said such rich words. When the Rebbe described it, the Rebbe said that when one has an institution with her name, this binds her with the work that's being accomplished in the spreading of Yiddishkeit and Chassidus. So this is all after Chof Beis Shevat. And therefore, as mentioned earlier, I believe what Rabbi Spalter was saying is each and every one of us, we have to say, Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu. We have to thank Hashem that the Rebbe revealed to us something that was hidden. It was hidden for decades. We were there. And the Rebbe decided at that time to share it with the Chassidim. Of course, the Rebbetzin herself, so few expressions, so careful in everything that she says. And yet, later on, after Chof Beis Shevat, we started hearing the stories from the various families that had the privilege of being close. But there's one expression. To hear that from the Rebbetzin herself, someone who's so careful that the Rebbetzin should express something that is so personal, so powerful. And we hear this from a few sources, that when the Rebbetzin was asked this incredibly personal question, and maybe because it was young children, when they asked her the question, where are your children? The Rebbetzin responded, the Chassidim are the children. So the Rebbetzin is saying that us, you, I, our children, all of us Chassidim, we are the children. The Rebbe himself said by the Yarhtzeit of the first year, the Rebbe said that if we fear zich, if we conduct ourselves in her spirit, it is then Zara B'chaim, and then He B'chaim. And that's when the Rebbe continued with that statement that I said earlier, that she prays and she davens l'mayla in everything that we need. One of the first things that we could think about when you think of a child and the child's obligation to a parent, or what a parent would expect from a child, is that when it comes to the Yarhtzeit, we observe the Yarhtzeit. Quite literally. I remember hearing from this bacher who many years ago, after Gimel Tammuz, he spent time by a shliach. And this shliach was in a place, in a city where it was very difficult to even have a minyan on Shabbos, on Yom Tov. Very few Jews there. And every Shabbos he would try and scrape together to be able to find 10 yidden that will come together and daven. Sometimes he was successful, sometimes he wasn't. And then it came Chof Beis Shevat. And he's working the phones to try to get together a minyan for Shachris, for Mincha, for Ma'ariv. And this Bacher is looking at him and he says to him, Rabbi, you didn't have a minyan last Shabbos. You're trying to make a minyan today? The Shliach looks at him and he says, if not us, who? If not us, who is observing Yarhtzeit? It's each and every one of us, men, women, and children. Was ein Chassidim from Rebbe that have the privilege that the Rebbetzin allows us to be the children. That the Rebbetzin invites us to Prave Yarhtzeit. We all remember, for those who were there, in Tafshim Mem Ches, Mem Tes, Nun, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, after the years, after the Rebbetzins passing, every year Chassidim would come from all over the world. It was understandable. Everyone was there for the Hilula, for the day of Chof Beis Shevat. Who would miss out? And when the Bachrim printed a Mishnayos for everyone to learn and it was sent to the Rebbe commented on the Mishnayos, thus approving it. Many Chassidim made sure to have Aliyah of the Shabbos before. And whatever way we observe the Yarhtzeit, this was something that was natural. It was something that Chassidim did. This is our schus. This is our privilege to follow the directions that the Rebbe gave us, to use this day to learn in Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah, and to grow as Chassidim, mitoich mesiras nefesh, in honor of the Rebbetzin. So the Rebbe gave a number of heroes for this day. But I just would like to point out one particular message from the Rebbe that's also a Dvar Pella. And I remember this vividly. After all, that was a time, it was a difficult time for all of us. And this was just a few days after the Shloshim. And it came to the Lichtike Tag, to the Yom HaBohir of Chof Hei Oder. It was the birthday of the Rebbetzin. And of course, it was a very emotional day. It was, like I said, right after Shloshim. And the Rebbe spoke a sicha from the house, and the Rebbe said that he wants to be matzia, a minig toiv, a good custom, a new custom, a minig. And the Rebbe went on to describe that everybody knows that the custom of celebrating your Yom HaYoledes, your birthday, is something that was done generations before, but only by Yechidei Segula, by the exclusive few, the tzaddikim. And then the Rebbe himself published the teachings of the Frierdiker Rebbe in our generation, publicized the customs of the birthday, that it's a day of reflection, of introspection, of the last year of how it went, of making resolutions for the coming year, and to repair anything that needs repairing. And that night the Rebbe said he wants to make an addition to that minhag. And the addition, the Rebbe said it in 2 points. The first one was that from now on we should do this minhag mitoch simcha, with joy. That there should be a hisvadus, there should be a farbrengen of simcha, a birthday party. And at that hisvadus, that's where the individual celebrating the birthday will make the resolution. And then all these people become like Asela Charav. You're held accountable. They'll come back to you. Where's the hachlata? How did your resolution turn out? And the second is, the Rebbe said that this should be brought to every yid, anoshim, noshim, v'taf, man, woman, and child. Everyone should have this minig, this celebration of Yom HaLedus. The Rebbe spoke about this. The Rebbe didn't speak about it as a campaign. The Rebbe spoke about it as a minig Yisroel. The Rebbe even went into a discussion that some could complain that it says you're not supposed to, that we refrain from adding minhagim or adding new things. And the Rebbe explained that because there's negative things in the world in Yanim built to Ritzuyim, therefore there's a place for addition in the positive. But the Rebbe was describing it all as a minig. And then the Rebbe adds a few words. And this is an incredible thing when you look at the Sikha, the edited Sikha from the Rebbe. In a parentheses, when the Rebbe says he wants to add this minig, the Rebbe says, V'yesh loymar l'chol haroitzim shezel lischusa u'le'ilu nishmasa. That if you want, and who doesn't want? If you want, you can have that this custom and your efforts of Yom Haledes and the pashtus, the gathering that you're making in the Eifen Shel Simcha with this Eisafa to this minig, if you choose to, you can make this in the merit of our Rebbetzin and Ilui Nishmasa. I don't know if we find another example of a takana, a minig, a mitzvah, of something that the Rebbe should ask us to do. A minig Yisroel. The Rebbe said it was already in the spashit. It became a minig already. And that we're doing that minig, the Rebbe is saying, you can do it, il nishmasa, lischusa. A Yom Haledes is a personal thing. It's a foundational day in our life. It's the day we were created. It's the day we were born. And every year it's our own Rosh Hashanah where we grow in our Aveda of Hashem. So when we come to that day, the Rebbe is telling us, the Rebbe is giving us a schus. Imagine everyone in Chabad, if we follow the Rebbe's, when the Rebbe said about speaking this to men, women, and children, the Rebbe explained, he doesn't only mean your birthday, but when it comes to your children's birthday, you will celebrate with them. When it comes to your parents' birthday, you'll celebrate with them. So on average, if we follow that Ha'irah, we would be celebrating at least 10 times a year a birthday. So now if we come to a birthday, and I tell you, I've seen Chassidim do this, and you sit down with your daughter, and she's sitting with 20 of her friends, and they're celebrating, and she gets up and makes a hachlata, and you come to wish a happy birthday, and you come, you take a l'chaim, and you say, Kinderlach Tayre. We have a Rebbetzin who loves you, who views you Kinderlach, as her children. And we have a schus that if we follow in her ways, if we make resolutions today and we grow in our Yiddishkeit, we can have Zara B'chaim, and we can have this Farbrengen, this personal Yom Haledes of yours could all be l'schus u'lilu nishmas of the Rebbetzin. Imagine the gift the Rebbe gave us, that Chassidim in our daily lives, on a yearly basis, many times a year, we could bring the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin into our life, that we can elevate our own personal experience to be with the Rebbe and to be with the Rebbetzin. And therefore, darf danken dem Eibishten, Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, that the Rebbe was megala to us that which was nelam u'mechusa. And the Rebbe revealed to us that through our Aveda, we have the schus to have such a shaychus. And when we do so, we could come here to the Ohel, we could come to the tzin of the Rebbetzin with our families, with our wives, with our children, and we come here to say Ashreinu. We thank the Rebbe, we thank the Rebbetzin for that opportunity. I'll just conclude that I heard just lately the story with the Hager family. Everyone knows the Hager family in England that had a very close relationship with the Rebbetzin. And Mrs. Hager described of how that relationship started. It was the Zayda many years ago who was very ill, and he was told that he has to travel to Paris to get a very complicated surgery. It didn't look good. And through Chabad in London, he was inspired to go to New York and meet the Rebbe in Yechidus. He met the Rebbe in Yechidus. The family doesn't know the details, but they know he went back home. He did not have a surgery, and he recovered miraculously. And Mr. Hager decided he now took a second trip. He got on a plane from England in those days and made the trip to the Rebbe for one reason only: to say thank you. And the Rebbetzin heard about this. And the Rebbetzin asked to meet this Mr. Hager. And the Rebbetzin, after that, met with the family again and again, embraced them, and the relationship continued for decades and for eternity. And the Rebbetzin herself expressed later that she saw a person that decided to get on a plane from England to come specially. So each and every one of us Chassidim, when we come together with our families and we come here to the Rebbe and we celebrate the Yarhtzeit and we say Adaink and we say Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, certainly the Rebbe, the Rebbetzin brings us in, brings us close, and we have the schus of being able to hopefully be zeicha and be royu to be mazar b'chaim, afi b'chaim.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Shemtov. Those varme Wörter, those warm words. I was just speaking to Rabbi Lou, and he told me that when his family would go, as young kids, would go visit the Rebbetzin in their house, as he mentioned earlier when he spoke, so they would sing a Nigunim. They would all, I guess, together sing the Nigunim, the Beinani, for the Rebbetzin. And she would sit and listen to the Nigunim. And as they would get close to the end of the Nigunim, they were able to see that there was tears in her eyes. And she told them that this was her father's favorite Nigunim, and she had a big chvivus for this Nigunim. So we'll sing the Beinani. Ya 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 ya. Hey ya 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 yo ya ya na ma ya ya my who ya 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 Ayo yinam tere ya 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 hey ya la 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 ya ya hey ya ta la la ya ya hey ya 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 mam hey ya la 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 ya hey ya ta la la ya ya hey ya oh ya yo yinam ya la la hey ya 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 ay ya ya Chaim, Chaim. Would like to introduce our next speaker, who will speak to us in Yiddish. For the Yiddish speakers, the known Mashpia, Rabbi Shlomo Zarchi, Mashpia in 770. And it's always a joy to listen to Rabbi Zarchi talk about whatever he talks about. But befrat, when he speaks about such a inyan, naila, about the Rebbetzin, so I'd like to ask everyone to please take your seats and give your undivided attention to a mashpia, Rabbi Shlomo Zarchi, who will speak about the Rebbetzin.
Der Kopf ein bisschen Thomas mäßig sein, weil wir müssen geredet. Wenn ich getan, was im Dort zu reden war, ein bisschen älter, wir werden in Zeiten nach Farbigen geleitet, ist es, ja. Der Kopf an ihm, Rabbis und Blätter kommen in Dienst für Nacht, einmal eine Woche, werden kommen eben zu sein Imamen, kommen alle Wochen schon sein. Aber sie kommen durch ein Basement, nehmen einen Elevator, abgehen eben, ja. Das sagt man, eine Woche gehalten, offen den Tier von der Elevator. Und schon sind sie eben, und sie gewartet, das sagt sein. Vielleicht alle mal kommen sein, sie warten noch, gehen eben, aber wegtreiben die Wochen von den Tieren, von der Elevator. Das ist eine Rahmen gewesen und gehen neben sein. Aber Kopfhörer ist, ja, fein. Sagt sie kommen, sagt sie, heimnehmen dem Rebbe, ja, in der Nacht, sagt der Rebbetzin, heimnehmen dem Rebbe, ja. Wo ist gehen? Aber die Wochen gewusst, nicht zu stehen in die alle Ärzte, ja. Also Pesach, wenn der Rebbe und der Rebbe schon begleitet, wenn Rebbes Mama ein von Seder zur Präsenz wird, hat man wahrscheinlich nicht zu stehen auf der Gassen, aber von Weitem hat man gut gesehen, ja. Und nach der Hashvi'i, bei der Rebbetzin stehen auf der Union Street, und der Rebbe sagt, ruhig gehen, da gehen wir und gehen mit Jüngsten dahin, ja. Pesach, noch das Dorim, ja. Ja, der Kopfmann hat wieder gewöhnt, das Weber auf Achtzeit. Gestern zu Menschen wissen da, aber Menschen haben gehabt die Starkheit, dass sie werden in Johann von Kuchen Postes, dann kommen Rebbe nicht zu, nicht nach. 3 Säge, 4 Säge, 2 Säge. Anderen gekauft, hat bekommen, Macher gewinnt, sie leben gewonnen, sie kommen Rebbe. Und anderen gehabt einen Tor, dann kommen Strip, ja. Und der Rebbe ist dann schon, und machen jenen schon sehr gut, sie sind nicht aufgeweckt, wir schlafen nicht, das ist halt dasselbe. Einige Sachen sind gut, bei 5 Säge soll man nicht kommen, bei 5 Säge können sie nicht kriegen, aber der Rebbe wird sich zulegen, 5, 6 Säge in der Früh, für die 2 Stunden. Hat man gewusst, nicht zu kommen, aber selten die ganze Nacht gekommen im Reben, ja. Und der Rebbe zum Herren, gehen zum Reben, kriegen die Schuhe und machen den Menschen fühlen sehr gut. Also nicht fühlen, die getan hat, das Verable, die Kinder sind geweckt und verkehrt und ernst. Und dann wollte ich sagen, wir kommen nach zurück, wollte dein Telefon. Und ich sagte, ich gebe den guten Numbers, mir wird das nicht verschreiben. Ich sagte nur den Number, weil ich nicht komme nach zurück. Ja. Das ist immer für die ganze Welt. Johannes Kuchen und Forsches, was man gekommen reden, sieht gemacht, jeder einen fühlen sehr gut. Okay, die 100 Meisters sind nicht so eine communal Meisters. Und ich sage gleich, Tisse, Topf in meinem Herz. Der Rebbe sagt, Schnastisch machen. Der Rebbe hat allen geredet, Schnastisch machen. Was wird schon sein, Schnastisch machen? Der Rebbe hat sehr getan zum Reserven, also wie Jutches, Jutes. Sind die gewinnen als solche Hakofis, und gleich alle erschrocken und sagen, was wird sein, Heimpicken, ja. Ich wusste, der Rebbe hat getan, sie nicht gewinnen, sie gewinnen, Herr vor anderen Jahren, bin 30 Jahre zurück, ich bin der Kopf, es ist Narzissmach. Und da habe ich später gelernt, ich meine, ich Narzissmach, ja. Kopf an ein paar Tage, Chof Beis Shevat, der Gemeinde Yichidisch Klolis, ja. Und der Rebbe hat dann gesagt, was sicher, und zum Schluss hat sie reingefahren, steht auf Tzadikim, natürlich, Kedem, Mashiach kommt, geht la fahren. Ja, sie nicht da ist. Aber kurz, wir können jeder sein, die Penafsche Kopf über Kilti, und beten in alle Heim. Das ist die Ende sicher. Ich bin da Schreck bei allen, etwas im Rahmen der Rebbe, am Boden der Meister gewinnt. Gerät dahin, und dann kann ich gemeint, zu der Sicher, Kedem, Mashiach ist es, Kedem nach vorn, und gedreht, und es kann sein, mit Gesetze sein, mit dem Nachschokopf und Kultur, Kedem nach vorn, und beten in alle Heim. Und der Rebbe ist nämlich Gefühl gut, der Rebbe ging nach Hause, namens mit dem Tag, speziell während der Rebbetzin. Und der Rebbetzin hat gemacht von Rebbe, dass ich gut, der Rebbetzin bei der Rebbe kommt. Jetzt hat alle Jahren gemacht, alle Jahren, aber der Rebbe soll nicht wissen, soll nicht sterben dem Rebbe ihr Bericht. Ich wusste, dass der Rebbe nimmt zum Herzen ihr Bericht. Das ist kaum getan, das ist besser. Ja. Ich habe mal gehabt, dass von Begann so, dass ich bin in Purim, ich war mal rein zum Rebbe nicht Stub. Und der Rebbe ist ein kalte Wasser auf der Hand. Ja. Kalte Wasser auf der Hand. Sagt er, was ist passiert? Sagt er, gar nichts. Er geht nach Hause und er sagt, sie sind gewisse Wege, und er sagt, bald kommt der Rebbe ein Stub. Der Rebbe kann nicht erzählen, aber er sagt, dem Rebbe, etwas ist passiert. Ja. Soll ich dir erzählen, aber auf einen Tag, dem Rebbe nicht erzählen, der Rebbe wird ein Farbrengen. Wir wollen sein, auf den Rebbe auf den Kopf, wir können verbringen, die Chassidim, glatschig. So ist sie gefallen, und ich kann nicht auch den ganzen Hand hier. Hat er geheißen, so der setzen sich. Und dann wird zu sagen, wir haben den Funker reingestubt. Und dann wird er lange in alle Jahren, und sie ist auch nicht so viel auf dem Platz, der Rebbe gekommen. Und bis der Rebbe ist gegangen zu der Verbrengen vor ihm. Der Rebbe kommt zurück, hat Tennissen von der Rebbe in Gas, bis zum Rebbe, und der Rebbe ist in zerbrochener Hand. Der Rebbe hochgelaufen, die Tret, und fängt schon begann, was ist passiert. Sagt er, das nicht? Sagt er, erzähl mir. Ich habe zugesagt, der Rebbe ist nicht erzählen. Der sagt, er heißt das erzählen, darfst du erzählen. Aber die Manager erzählen keine Sachen, und dann nicht erzählen, ja. Sagt er, wegen, ach, ich. Kopf von der Rebbe gesessen 3 Jahre,
Bis schon Berte genommen zur Doktor, und der Rebbe gegangen schon 70, und von zu mir, das war vor der Rebbe von mir, wir gehen von mir den ganzen Tag, ja. Und in ist mir ein Meister, genau schwachere Meister, der Rebbe ist noch gefallen, wir hatten schwache Beine. Ich habe mal Tische, der Rebbe ist gefallen, und kam nicht jemand dahin, die andere sagt, Echo. Bis der Rebbe ist noch, der schleppt aus dem Elevator, dort und da Telefon. Ich komme zu Amerika, ich komme in geantwortet, bis mit geantwortet, alle Maskieren dann gelaufen in den Stub. Und der Rebbe gefahren jede Nacht nicht betont, Tische beim Nacht mit der Rebbetzin. So eine ganze Meister, die haben gesagt, eine private Sache. Andere Meister gesagt, eine Tochter, ich bin nicht gesund. Der Rebbetzin gemisst eine ganze Zeit nicht betont. Wie der Rebbe in alles Mann gedreigt wegen allem, und der Rebbetzin gedreigt wegen allem, ja. Das ist ein Gebe, alle Nigunim. Aber sie vergefallen als Sache. Ja, auch ob man zu Hause behalten, allemal von Rebbe, es wird der letzte Tag, wir haben noch einmal gefahren zu ins Spital. Hat sich angehört, die Nurse soll gut für Rebbe da kommen, beim Präsident, soll sich nicht schrecken, sondern gut machen, als es ist gesund, ja. Ich weiß nicht, was, aber der Rebbe hat eben gar nicht betont, gefallen schwarz, ich so, danach, der Rebbe ist noch rein zum Rebbe, ein paar Minuten reden mit ihm. Aber der Rebbe sagt schon begann, weil Kinder wollte erzählen, Atam, was davor ist nicht betont. Der Rebbe doch nicht gefahren, allemal gefahren ist betont, für der Rebbe fahren. Da der Rebbe nicht gefahren ist betont. Er hat nicht gewollt sagen, was der Rebbe dann gesagt. Das Schiebe, was davor ist nicht betont. Ich habe da Nächten gefragt, aber es scheint gar nicht an den Tränen. Und alle Jahre, die kennt, haben nicht gewollt erzählen. Ich habe der Rebbe dann gesagt, also klingen alle 5 Minuten, was macht der Rebbe nicht betont. Und er hat ihm gesagt, er kommen alle 5 Minuten. Das letzte Mal, was passiert, hat gebeten Dr. Feldmann, soll klingen. Sagen dem Rebbe, was passiert. Ein halbes Jahr später, der Rebbe ging nach Heilig, an der Heilig gekommen, was die geschickt hat, wegen zu kommen. Nicht ein Heilig Wort. An der Heilig kommen, darf man kommen, das Zuge darf kommen. Aber was du geschickt hast, wegen soll man kommen, ja. Ich sage, Herr, ich kann so sagen, dem Rebbe die Psyre, ich schicke ein Doktor. Aber der Rebbe ging nach Heilig, was hat allein nicht gekommen. Ja, Kopan, ja, Sachen machen meistens, wie der Rebbe ist noch gedeiget. Ich weiß, ich meine, mit der Rebbe gehabt, noch der Herzattacke, der kriege dann gewinnt jede Nacht. Aber da können geschrien, dass man mich betont, wuchu. Gewinnt hin von sich Tag, noch eine Herzattacke, gewinnt sehr kritische Matze. Und da kriegen gesagt, man muss fahren. Und man denkt, das alle Rabbonim, sie haben nicht, was zu passen, hat man machen, und sagen, bei der Rebbetzin, was zu tun. Der Rebbe ist gesagt, die Kinder getan, helfen wie der Rebbe. Hat der Rebbe gesagt, früher, was man soll tun. Der sagt, man soll nicht nennen, nicht betonen. Nee, weil der Rebbe das nicht, sondern der Rebbe nicht passen. Weil der Rebbe hat kein einmal gefolgt, was der Rebbe sagt. Soll nicht machen, dem Rebbe eng passen, soll nennen, und der Rebbe kann nicht gehen. Zu machen, nur dem Rebbe eng, besser bei der Rebbe nicht zu passen, sondern der Rebbe nicht betonen. Koppen, sie gehen vernichten, alle Jungen von den Doktoren, sie gewollt reden mit dem Doktor, alle Jungen, nicht alle wissen mehr von mir. Und in die anderen Jungen. Und ich bezahle allein, hat sie da gebeten, was schon begann, begann nach was Wasser. Peter hat gesagt, macht zerbrochen, wie alle Rebbetzin früher haben da gebeten nach was Wasser. Papier ist Falkes. Rebbetzin Chaya, Rebbetzin Rivke, ja. Na klar, die wird das mir noch geben, und die wird mir sein, so gleich. Noch was Wasser, über die Falkes, ja. Wir sind mit ihm gehört, dass wenn die Falkes mir gleich gelaufen, Rebbe nicht zu, was, ne? Und wir gesagt, dass wie der Rebbe gehen die Treppe, man kann bei seinem Ohren nicht stub, ja. Ja, er kommt von mir, er geht in alles um nach Rüge von Stub, ja. Er geht und begann zu breiten, die Schlösser von Stub, und keiner soll nicht kennen, auch in Stub, ja. Also ich weiß, ich kann Russland einen tauschen Film. Sagte, nein, du nächst bleiben, aber kein anderer Chassid, die sollen nicht kommen. Und beiden ist besser, ja. A Kopanim, das kann eine Schale, wo man soll legen, von 2 Plätzen zu legen, ja. Für gewisse, Rebbe mir gewollt liegen beim der Bobbe, ja. Hat mir gesagt, dem Rebbe, man würde zu legen von der anderen Seite, von der anderen Seite. Rebbe mir würde gerade Kadisha und legen. Und ich gewusst, aber als Baby gewollt liegen beim der Bobbe, ja. Und ich lege beim der Bobbe, hat der Rebbe später gegeben, alle, für Kadisha, $1, für $1, hat was womit ich gelegt, ja. Gut, a Kopf der Rebbe hat geredet im nächsten Jahr, als da Judalef schwarz auf Judalef, ja. Und Judalef für der Kirche von Jud, ja. Ist nicht süß, aber es soll geben Judalef schwarz, ja. Und das ist Chof Beis Shevat zweimal Judalef, ja. Die Herrlichkeit von dem Tag von Chof Beis Shevat für 2-mal Judalef, ja. Und ich bechol gewehr Yisroel. Alle Brachas können bechol gewehr. Chof Beis Shevat bechol gewehr Yisroel, ja. Ich komme von ihm, einmal eine ganz guten Iden. Und ich sage ihm, guten Iden, sie ist so heim dort Zadik in Historien. Sagt sie, ja. Ich kann mir bei einer Bruder Zadik nicht. Sagt er, gucken auf mir. Sagt er, ihr seid der Zadik nicht, ich habe eine bewusste gute Rede. Sagt er, der Mensch, dass du das hast. Weißt du, wo du guckst? Ja. Guck mal, in alle Reden, wir haben nicht keine Sorge, wo der Rebbe ist, wo der Rebbetzin ist. Sie sind ein höherer Mensch, es ist nicht gescheile. Ich denke einmal, ich habe jemanden gemacht, am Maime der Rebbe Shabbos, war ich ein Rabbe, und eingegeben zum Rebbe. Wir haben hingegangen, ein Rabbe für 5 Minuten. Ich dachte, gleich kommen auf zurück, geben die Brache, nur. Aber der Rebbe mir gegeben, ein Blättel von meinem, mich sie gewähnt, super von Blättel, ja. Aber der Rebbe kommt nach Hause. Ein Mensch gemeint, der Rebbe gegessen nach Sudi, ja. Echt, nach Schlachmutter gefasst, neu gegangen nach Hause, Menschen so, nein, also geht nach Hause. Bei Koponim, gewegen beim Gessen am Tisch, hat der Rebbe schon gleich gebracht, der Päckl den Brief. Der Rebbe die ganze Zeit gestanden und geantwortet, Brief. Der Rebbe kommt nach ihm nach Wäscher offiziell, mit der ganzen Bande Tshuvis. Der Rebbe ist und sagt, Messade öffnet die Briefasach, und Messade sein Päckelach. Und der Rebbe ist und sagt, haben der lange die ganze Zeit die Brief, und der Rebbe sagt, anfangen, die ganze Zeit mit Tshuvis, ja. Für ein paar Minuten, ich bin nicht durch, der Rebbe gewinnt, von Numen sie zum Verkehr geholfen, als dann die Nigunim. Und dann ist jemand mit Sprache zum Gebeten, wir brauchen es, das lassen essen, und sie das so schon begann, auf der Meistes, wie eine Sprache, sie darf eine Brache, und der wird gehört, und der wird gehört, ja. Aber guck mal, sie darf nach Meistes, ob ich nicht gehe. Und der Kudi ist einmal gekommen, 6 früh, ungarische, zum Rebbe-Stück war bei ihm, bei Betten, eine Brache, und der Rebbe ist in der Decke ins Stub, und der Rebbe ist in sich gesehen, sich in Gas, hat sie zugerufen, hat was warten, auf den Rebbe, der Rebbe ist in der Werk, und haben sie gemacht, weinen, sie kommen weg nach Brache auf Kinder. Der Rebbe ist in Gessen, sie verschreiben sie ihren Namen, und er gesagt, also gehen sie dann dem Doktor, zieht sie nicht begeben den Namen, und zu sein Beseder, ist alle, auch ist einer, dann gehen sie an den Doktor, und der Doktor hat sie expected, der Rebbe ist schon gekallt, dass wir kommen, also alle gehabt Kinder, ja. Der Rebbe hat das auch immer gesagt, also ich kann Menschen noch besser näher, sie haben zur Tochter, einmal kurz reden, wir können bei ihr beten Braches, also sie können geben Braches. Guck mal, sie gedeiget den ganzen Leben, und sie gedeiget von Reben. Und sie gebeten, sagen Reben, so ein Spanien, ich kriege das die ganze Nacht, und dann Rebbe ist Bries, und sie sich nicht abhalten, Menschen warfen, auf den Reben, zu reingehen, sie sich nicht abhalten, mit dem Reben von Chassidim, ja. Da kann bis allem gehadet früher, an der Rebbetzin Chaya, als wir wollen Chof machen, bei der Tate Geburt, der Rebbe geantwortet, der Letzte, was wir wollen Chof machen, das ist der Rebbe, der schwere Geburt, ja. Und sie gewusst, was meint der Rebbe, so der Rebbe wird schaffen, Es geht nicht ein bisschen. Der Prat ist, legt man sich weg im Ganzen, und gar nicht existiert nicht. Und dann ist er gegangen. Aber das ist gewähnt, am ganzen Weg in der Vereinigung. Wir wissen gar nicht, der Rebbe, wenn ich stirb, der Rebbe gewähnt eine andere Welt. Sicher, alles sicher ist der Rebbe mehr gegeben, wenn ich stirb. Und befragt, wie der Rebbe nicht im Seden gesagt hat, er geht nicht schlafen bei Nacht, bis er guckt über die ganze Welt, und was kann eine Sache sein, ist eine Sache. Selbe Sache, der Rebbe, das gewähnt, die Scheu ist gehabt, der Kopf von ihm ist da ein flacher Gemeinschaft. Und der Rebbe ist noch gedeiget, der Knochen war mit Ches, hat der Rebbe nicht nur Medizin in Pesach für der Herz. Also ich wollte, der Rebbe soll Sachen gehen, bis in Stub. Also ich bin so begann, wir kommen mir, dann mich auf Bagoi, 36 Chof für Pesach, und der Fuß gehen auf 100 Chometz. Und wir können machen, der Rebbe soll nicht Sachen gehen nachher. Ich habe gewusst, war russisch und Goy, hat gearbeitet 36 Jahre, der Rebbe ist ein paar abgedankt. Ich wollte, der Rebbe soll gehen, Pesach, weil nimmt sich die Medizin von der Hand. Und keine Rabbis, das sagt man, kommen in den Stub, ich von der ganze Menschen. Aber guck, sie gedeiht wegen jedem einem, und als sie gewinnen ein Bier auf den Kopf, und Menschen haben gemeint, und wir kennen, wir gar nicht gekannt, sie gewinnen ein höherer Mensch, durchgegangen bei allen Chomes und allen Nigunim, und ein Pneumiswicke, und ein Pneumiswicke, und ein Chudiswicke Weg, es ist, ja. Da kommt man, wie der Rebbe gesagt, und sie hat es gemeint, ich will mit mir reden. Auf dem Belang des Forum, wie der Rebbetzin Chaya Mushkah Farbrengen, das Forum belangt zu Chassidim, weil der Tat hat belangt zu Chassidim. Und das ist nicht gewesen, Aussprache. Die gelebt hat sie, und das ist gewesen, die ganze Metzies. Sagt auf den Tzemach Sedek, dort war der Rebbetzin nicht alle geworden. Zum Sedek hat sie geführt sogar einen anderen Berg, hat sich abgezogen zu Chassidim, ja. Und er hat mir gesagt, Chassidim ist ganz nice. Dann mal gewesen, hat mir gesagt, das Schmur, zum Sedek gesagt, na Meimer. Also ich will Paris und alle Chassidim geworfen, geneden nach Tachten, als Herr na Meimer. Dann gab es schon Zeit, und zum Sedek ist nicht rausgegangen. Peter Brühl gedacht, rausgehen, ja, genau, Period. Der hat wie junge Leute reden, was sagst du nicht, zum Sedek am Meimer, weil zum Sedek ist zu brauchen, weil Rebbetzin ist weg, kennen wir so ein Chassidim. Ich will Paris erkennen und gesagt, Schwänzelach. A Rebbe nicht kein Stern, a Pony, a Nose, a Egen. A Rebbe soll der Kuss, aber Kuss ist beherrlich, mit der Rebbe beherrlich. Ich weiß nicht, wie zu gucken auf a Rebbe. Ich will wissen, wie zu gucken auf die allen Unionen. Das ist nicht der Pschat, der Pschat ist, jen Tischrittbacke von meinem Ches, a der Rebbe kommt von Ohel, war schon sehr spät, aber fast konnte da reingehen, es ist nicht getan, allemal zu der Rebbetzin, die bin schlicht, also auch eine gute Jonte. Peter Farbrengen, schon der Rebbetzin, zum Zweiten gesagt, reingehen zu der Rebbetzin, schon, aber sie bin am Malchus. Bald sie bin am Malchus, sagt vom Zweiten, reingehen zu der Rebbetzin, schon. Und dann der Rebbetzin in meinem Gestag gegangen. Der Kopf von ihm ist das Sachen, meiste Sachen, was sie reden, ich weiß nicht eben der Zähler. Es war Blut, ein Herrscher in Jonim, ja. Der Rebbetzin bin übergegeben zu der, ich denke, man muss was tehren. Der Rebbe ist gleich nach Hause, und sagt, Paschan, hat der Herzattacke. Bei mir rief ich in Stub auf dem Gas, der gebeten auf dem Brick, und der Rebbe ist gleich nach Hause. Hat die gebeten auf dem Brick, und der Rebbe gesagt, man soll aufhören nach einigen in der Stub. Und Doktorin sagt, dass man nicht vertraut, der Rebbe sagt, das ist gesund, man in der Stub. Es ist eine halbe Stunde, der Rebbe gestanden als im Gas. Mitten zu gewinnen, mehr Haulig, und sagt, geht zu der Rebbetzin, sie kam es, sie ist zu tragen, die Herz von die Bochum an der Koffer geendigt sagt, und da kommt noch nicht daheim, sondern es sind auch zu der Seele mit dem Rebbe. Nur es ist abgehalten zu der Seite, immer nichts, Eine von Bries, ja. Der geworfen nach Himmel, der Rebbe sagt, ihr habt mit dir auch schon beschrieben, das hat sie gedacht, sie gestanden, gewarnt. Also ich gehört, der Kopf ist so geendigt, sagt, und der Rebbe noch ist gekommen nach Himmel, ja. Der Kopf an ihm, sag mal, der Rebbe nicht gekommen nach Himmel, der Rebbe ist in den Hall, der kommt zum Rebbe, der Rebbe nicht geämpft in den Telefon, als sie kommt in den Hall, die ist mir geämpft in den Telefon, als sie der Rebbe ist schon 70, zu alt beschrieben, ja. Sie gewartet auf Yechidus bis in die Früh, bis der Rebbe zu Hause kommt, der Rebbe ist nicht zugelegt. Peter ist gegangen nach Med, die geht nachher sicher, der Rebbe nimmt sein Aspirin, sein Pil, seine Medizin, die nicht sich ein- und zulegen, sagt, sie machen sicher, der Rebbe ist gesund, der Rebbe kann nach Hause gehen zu Chassidim, und der Rebbe sind zu uns, und mit viel geredet, mit allen Rebbe ist Kinder, und Mashiach kommt bald und da Sachen, was sie reden, aber es geht nicht zu. Die Icke ist, da sieht sich alles gewinn ernst. Es ist nicht gewinn, Platz, sagt unsere Kinder, es ist eine Sprache, wie wir reden. Wir reden doch, weißt du. Das ist immer Blut und sie gewinn ernst, als man gehalten hat, jeder Kinder sehr, so gefiltert zu uns wie mit Kindern, gedeigert uns mit Kindern, wenn es schon mehr mit unseren Simches wie mit Kindern. Und so mit alle Sender zusammen, wir tanzen zusammen zum Kirche kennen mit der Rebbe und Rebbetzin und Kol Hoyan, Vechom.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Zarchi. Before we conclude the program, I just want to conclude with translating one vort, one idea that Rabbi Zarchi said, and that is the vort that the Rebbetzin said by the parsha, by the court case of the Sforim, when she was asked by the lawyer if the Sforim belonged to your father, so she answered what became known to all of us, and maybe some don't know watching. She said the Sforim belonged to the Chassidim because the Rebbe belonged to the Chassidim. And that vort, the Rebbe mentioned it as a key moment in the whole case that turned everything around. But Rabbi Zarchi was saying was that she didn't only say this, but she actually lived it. That she gave the Rebbe to the Chassidim. In her mind, the Rebbe belonged to the Chassidim, and her life was completely dedicated to that idea. And whatever it took, she would stay up at night. As long as the Rebbe was not home, she didn't go home, she didn't go to sleep, because the Chassidim needed the Rebbe, and the Rebbe belonged to the Chassidim. So to her, this was a lifestyle, a way of life, not just a vort. Which is obviously understood that she wouldn't just say such a thing as a stamazeh. We're going to conclude the program, and I thank everyone for joining, those that watched and those that are here. And